Shine so bright, shine so bright, shine so bright, shine so bright, shine so bright.
Good evening, Facebook people. How the hell are you? Brian here from HeadStrong. It is the 29th of October. I'm just making sure my phone is off so it doesn't beep at us. I'm going to hope that all my technology works in the way that it's meant to. And I'm also hoping, to be perfectly honest, that some people actually join us tonight. Do you know why? Because some idiot... did anyone see that? That was cool. Some idiot went and planned a Facebook Live for the same time as the Great British Bake Off final. So any plan something at the same time as Bake Off, I'm expecting numbers to be slightly lower, perhaps than they normally are. So I'm not going to keep you for very long, and I promise no spoilers on here, so I won't say anything should it happen. We have a Sports Direct mug on the go, because that's just how I roll. Yeah, I hope you're all well. So what we're going to talk about tonight, and we've been putting out a couple of wee things recently. Apologies if any of you were like hello to everybody, to Jackie, to Debbie, to Lisa, as you join us. And if you're watching us on a recording because you decided to watch Who Runs Bake Off, then fab. Excellent. Thank you for watching. This is fab. I might talk to some of the people down here that were watching live, but I'm also speaking to you too. So don't feel as if you're left out. You are also and always known as the future people when we do these types of things. To the future people who watched the last one in the future, but now it's now, and now it's not the future anymore, but maybe you're still got to watch it in the future. But even if it's not the future, now is the future to when I recorded that last one, when we were talking to people in the future. Can I just say, Brexit didn't happen, and it doesn't look as if it's going to. So there we go. So what we're going to speak about tonight. So what we're going to do tonight is, I didn't really know. We've been putting out some posts, as I said, and we've been asking for some questions and some things like that. And as far as I know, we've got a couple that have come in, and we'll maybe start saving them up because they're quite small. They're not maybe something to base a whole live on, and we'll maybe do a kind of Q&A one. If anybody has any questions, hi Alan, as we are going through this, then please feel free to ask them in the comments, and we'll answer them as they go on what we're going to talk about. And tonight, I'm going to speak about something that I was speaking to a client about today, and I think is very interesting. I think it's a very interesting thing, and it was something that I hadn't talked about in quite a long time. And I thought, do you know what? I think that is the perfect thing for Facebook Live, because when I was speaking to my client about it today, he totally got it, and he was kind of sort of saying that he wished he'd heard this information a little while ago, when maybe it was a wee bit more relevant, and that will make sense as we go through what's happening. And it's going to be about families, but although I'm going to talk about kids and stuff in this, and partners and husbands and wives and all that type of stuff, it doesn't mean that you have to have any of those things. It's more about priorities. But what we're going to do, we're going to have a look at priorities through the eyes of relationship and family. So let's just set a scene. Basically what we're looking for and what we're talking about here is, when we're in a family, there's things that happen, or when you're in any situation, I suppose, in life, but primarily a family that we're going to talk about. I'm going to stop qualifying myself. Let's put it this way. We're talking about family. If you have one, brilliant. If you don't have, watch anyway. It's all going to be very interesting, because it's the easiest way to look at this, but you'll get the general idea. In families, what happens is, and in relationships, is that strange things happen sometimes. And sometimes things come out of the absolute blue. So you can be pottering along, and I meet many people like this because of my job. It's a frequent client thing that happens, is that someone will come into therapy or coaching, and what they'll do is they'll sit down in the room, and what you'll say is, how are you? And they'll go, well, I'm not very good. And it's almost like a spidey sense inside my head. It's almost like you can smell the fact that someone has been in a breakup, or that something unexpected has happened. And as you're sitting there across from someone, they tell you these stories about partners, husbands, wives, all of a sudden coming in one night, or all of a sudden something happening, a conversation happening, and a relationship just going like that and just breaking into bits. And often what happens is that people go, I don't know why it happened. But actually, when you start to analyze things and you start to look at it, actually the seeds of these things are sometimes sown much, much earlier on in a relationship than actually when the breakup happens. And sometimes, not only that, but what happens is that the person who maybe even was the person who decided to leave finds out that actually they were the ones that sowed the seeds without even knowing. So let me tell you what I mean by that. So I call this the perfect family pyramid. And do you know what? I used to call it that. And now I don't draw it like a pyramid anymore, so it's just going to be something about families. But let me give you something, and this might raise some shit. Let's put it that way, right? Because quite often when I talk about this, it raises some shit. So let me ask you first. You can put comments in about this, and if that's what you want to do. Actually, the chat here is more about how am I going to word this? What the chat here is about how you make decisions in your relationship. So let me give you, right, I'm going to give you what I find is the standard relationship priority list. We're going to imagine that there's 4 elements to this family that we're about to talk about. There's going to be you, whoever you are. There's going to be a partner. We're going to assume at first that that's going to be husband, wife, or something like that. But we'll talk about that a wee bit later when we talk about that as it widens out and becomes just partner. We're going to assume that there's children, and then we're going to assume there's work. And that one where I'm going to put work could involve lots of other things which we'll play with as they come. I've got a pen because I'm going to draw some stuff, and then I'm going to attempt to hold it up to camera. The really interesting thing is Facebook does something really clever, in that when you hold something up to the camera so that you can actually see words, it automatically flips things. So when I put my hand out to the right of my screen, as you can see from the way that I'm pointing, it goes the opposite direction. So please be prepared for me like waving pieces of paper around as they move in the opposite directions from where they should. So let's imagine it. Now, this is one of the most common things that I find in families. This is how families are set up. I'm drawing this live. It's incredible. I have these skills. And what we'll do is we'll do this one first. And when I say them on this, what I'm talking about is them, is I'm talking about a partner. So this is the standard model. Let me put some numbers next to them so that you can see what I mean by this. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is what happens, and this is the model. See, I'm already turning it the wrong way. So what happens is that in a family, what quite often happens is that the family, so one or both of the people who are involved in this family will stick the kids first. And that seems like the perfectly ordinary thing to do. I am going to put my children first. Why the hell wouldn't I? Then what happens is they fill in slot number 2. And what happens is they then put themselves second best to the kids, and then they prioritize everything else underneath, which therefore means them, which is the partner, husband, wife, whoever it is, and then finally work and other things, whatever that might be. Occasionally what you get is you get an adaptation to this. I've broken my pen, which is very clever. I don't know how I've managed to do that. I'm not going to get a highlighter. Luckily, I had a substitute, which is that you get a slightly different adaptation to that, which basically puts them even further down. Now, I am being kind here because actually for some people this comes even further down, and this is the model you get. So basically what happens, kids still at the top, then they put their partner, because why would they possibly put themselves? And then what happens is they put them, and then what happens is work and all the other things. But to be honest, we could probably draw another model of this that has this even higher up, and actually this person here comes lower and lower and lower down the list. Now, there is a big point here that we are going to make a little bit later on, and I'm going to make later on, about where you appear on that list. And what I'm hoping is that either one of two things. For the purposes of tonight's Facebook Live, it's awesome if you've just looked at that and went, well, why wouldn't that be right? That's, of course, what you would do. I am a parent. My children have to go first. I totally get that. I'm about to shrink. Excellent. I just noticed it's chopped my head off the top of the screen. I don't like it when it does that. Anyway, so you maybe think, well, why wouldn't it be like that? But can I just tell you why that's got a problem, right? So this one here, model number 1 or model number 2, both have significant issues. Actually, slightly different issues, but I'm going to show you what the significant issues are first. In fact, you know what we're going to do? We're going to start on this one, and let's watch what happens. So here's how this family runs. The kids are first, okay? So kids are number 1. And that's all fine. I would say that actually there is a period of life when you become a parent that actually the kids have to be first, because genuinely they cannot look after themselves at all. And therefore what happens is that they demand a lot of your attention. If you think about it, how many relationships that you have heard of, maybe even relationships that you know, maybe even yours, that what has happened is that actually in the first year or so after having a baby, maybe even the first 2 years, that the marriage is broken down, and what they've said is it was just the stress of having a baby. Now, that for me is because of these models, because what's happening is that at this point, the kids are first. However, I've got to say, I think if your relationship can't handle the pressure and the stress of those first couple of years, then potentially you've got bigger issues, because it is stressful, and there's no other way to put it. I know that what I do for a living, you might expect me to go, no, but children are the future, treat them well and help them change the world. I can't remember all the lyrics at the moment, otherwise I could have done the whole song. But basically, what's happening is that if that's not the case. Basically, being a parent is really fucking tough, and especially that first couple of years can be really tough, depending. And if you've got any challenges, even if you've got a baby who is like almost perfect, it's still stressful. Never mind if you add things in like trouble sleeping or teething troubles or something wrong with them medically or a tummy trouble or something like that. But that's not actually the issue, because the kids don't get to choose these models. The kids don't get to choose what happens here. This is you and your partner that ends up putting them here. Now, actually, your partner might say something in this model, for instance, like, you always put the kids first, and you always are choosing me second. And that is one of the key issues, because in this model, in terms of your relationship, we are going to assume that you have a lovely relationship. You don't have to be married, just a partner, whatever way it is. It could be a marriage, it could be just a relationship, whatever it is. But I'm going to assume in this case that this person here is also a parent of these children. We'll come back to that a little bit later on. So what happens is that the partner is now second best, and the partner is now constantly feeling second best to the children. Now, they might not feel that consciously. I'm not saying that they're walking about constantly going like that, my kids are more important than me and they shouldn't be. That's not what I mean by that. What I actually mean by that is that what actually happens is that when they turn around to you and say, look, wee Jimmy is now a year old. Why don't we go and get some time and maybe ask your mum to watch the kids? And what we'll do is we'll go out for dinner. What happens in this model, sorry for keeping lifting it up, if I could stick it somewhere, I'd stick it to the side of my head. In this model, what happens when they ask you whether or not you want to go out for dinner and leave the kids with somebody else, this is absolutely the model where this person here turns round and says things like, I don't really like asking my mum, they've not been well, and the kids have been like this, and wee Jimmy's got his club, and wee Rebecca's got her dancing, and somebody else has got something else, and do you know what, let's just do that another time. And what's happening is something that happens in many, many relationships. One of the things that happens in relationships is quite often we look to the big things that happen. Excuse me. So we look at things like that person cheated on that person, or that person did that thing to that person and that's why they left, or that all of a sudden they just came in one day and just said, I don't love you anymore. That is not how relationships break down. If you have had a relationship that at any point in it was based on love and had a loving portion to it in any way at all, I promise you that actually what happens in your relationship is that actually relationships get chipped away slowly but surely by little things like that. The relationships get chipped away by little things like the little thing that constantly doesn't get done. Your relationships get chipped away by a lack of time. You wouldn't believe, and again, for the guys that are watching, this is a wee word of warning for you, to be honest, from what I experience with my clients. One of the most common guy stories that I hear sometimes happens to women, but more predominantly guys, is that late 40s to early 50-year-old man will come in, and what they'll report is that the relationship has broken down all of a sudden. And what's happened is their wife has left them, or their wife has cheated on them, or something like that, and they don't know why. And the story is consistently the same. I was building up my pension. I wanted to retire early. I know I work hard, and I know that I do a lot, but I've provided a standard of living, and I've provided a lovely house, and I've provided this, and I've provided that, and I can't work out why it's happened. And one of the things that happens is that actually, in terms of this model here, what actually happens is they see this as providing for these things, but actually what it looks like to this person is that this is the most important thing in their world. They can't see the pension pot. They don't see maybe the long-term plan. Maybe they don't think like that. And actually what your kids and your wife have been screaming out for is you. And that's the point. Because here in my lovely, roughly drawn model, when the kids are number one, the partner always feels second best. But what that then means is you're third best. I'm going to flip this now from a guy example into a predominantly, but not exclusively, female example. And what tends to happen with this woman here, if this is a female, if this is a wife or a partner who is a female in this, and a mum, let's put it that way. That was the easier way to say it, Brian, for goodness sake. If this is a mum, then this is the mum who constantly never feels as if she's quite feeling herself. This is the mum that's not gone for a haircut in the way that she would love to get a haircut done in years because, oh, well, I've not really got the money because the kids, need this, this, and this, and he has this, this, and this. So do you know what? I'm fine. I don't really care. But actually, every time you look at yourself in the mirror, you feel just a little bit, and you're not exactly happy with how things are. I'm not saying that a haircut all of a sudden changes your life. That'll be a part of something else and a future one. But you get my point. What happens is that you start a cycle where you're third best in your own life. Third best in your own life. So what happens is now your partner's feeling second best, you're feeling third best. Who is this person that your work is getting? It doesn't matter whether you're a mum or a dad in here, your work are getting a really shit version of you, to be perfectly honest. Come on, think about it. Really, they are. If all of these people are ahead of you, and then what happens is work comes. Now, imagine if we put work in here, then the whole thing just even falls apart even more. And this is what happens. You see, if you're somebody who's self-sacrificing to try and make yourself a happy life, I promise it's not going to work. I'm not saying that temporarily we don't have to sometimes put in some self-sacrifice, and I'm also not advocating that you become a selfish bastard and just tell them all where to go and that you're going to do whatever the hell you want. I'm not advocating that at all. That's not what I mean. But if you're self-sacrificing to try and improve your life and keep your family afloat, that's not what's happening. All you're doing is you're teaching really bad habits. Let me ask you a question. And I think that it doesn't matter whether you're a parent or not, if you're watching this, I think you'll be able to answer this. How do you make a spoiled child? Have you ever thought about that? How do you make a spoiled child? And I bet that we've all just had the same answer. Basically, how you make a spoiled child, if any of your friends have got spoiled children, anything like that, and what happens is that, sorry, I've just read a comment. The plant is still alive. It's still here. We'll talk about the plant at the end. Sorry, Jackie. I saw that comment there. It made me laugh. Anyway, so if you are somebody who is constantly, sorry, I've lost my train of thought there. If you're somebody who's constantly putting themselves in self-sacrificing, you're third best in your own life, and that's not good. That spoiled child gets made because that spoiled child gets made by constantly being put first. I'm not saying that just because your children are first, that means that you always tell them they're right. But what are you teaching them? What happens when they are always first on your list? What happens when even above you, you will give it to them before you give it to yourself? What are you teaching them as adults? Children do not stay children forever. Your children are trainee adults. And that little 4-year-old who's all cute and you go, oh, of course you can have it. Mum or dad will go without this because you just look so cute. I'm not saying that's not a great idea now and again, and we did it as well when our children were smaller, and I totally get it. But when you're doing it all the time, what you're developing is you're developing a habit, and you're developing a habit in that child's head. And when they're 14, 15, 16, 17, let me give you an example. I was in a room the other day. Apologies, there's some very mildly bad language coming up. I was in a room just recently, a couple of weeks ago, and one of my 12-year-old clients sat with his mum, and mum said something. I can't remember what she said. And 12-year-old turned round and went, just fuck off. That's not what's going on. Now, you might think, oh my God, I can't believe that a 12-year-old would talk to his mum like that. His mum genuinely didn't react. His mum genuinely just went, oh, stop that, stop using that language. But you could tell that actually the balance of power seemed to be just a little bit tilted. It might not be like that all the time. Maybe I just saw a little moment that was just one off and I just saw it in a wee microcosm. But it's a really interesting thing to see. Because you see, when kids are number one, what happens? Sorry, I'm on this one. When kids are number one, what happens is kids learn that they're number one. And therefore, they start to be able to play you off each other, especially these two people, if you're mum and dad. They start to learn how you work. Now, what happens is that, therefore, now, so this person's feeling second best, this person is now getting spoiled, or these people are now getting spoiled, you're still third best, and your work is suffering. If I turn around to this level, now think about how that, you might think, oh, look, that's better, now I'm second. Nope, because now what's happening is your partner's third best, and now they're really feeling it. I'm going to tell you right now that both of these sides of this sheet, kids, partner, you, work, or even kids, you, them, work, and can I just chuck in a couple of extras in here that might be interesting? Let me ask, if you were to chuck, if they're still about, your mum and dad into this list, where do they come on the list? If your partner said something like, do you want to, but your mum and dad had asked you to do something else, who wins? Partner or mum and dad? Because all of a sudden this list can get very, very long. When your best friend asks you to do something, who goes in the list? I could be really facetious and add the dog and the cat in, but I'm not going to, because we know that they always come first, and that's just the way that it goes. So what am I suggesting? What I'm suggesting is that when these models are at play, and when we're living life like this, we are suffering, our relationships are suffering, and actually, unconsciously, our children might not realize they're suffering, but what we're doing is we're building a rod for our own parental backs that we might not be able to get out by the time that our children are teenagers. So this and these two things are the types of relationships that basically end up breaking up and nobody really knowing why. I don't know what it was. We just fell out of love. I don't know what it was. It just felt as if we just grew apart. Now, these things naturally happen in relationships. We're all human beings. So I'm not saying that this is the only reason it happens, but I promise you it's one of the predominant ones. The client I was speaking to today was saying that he reckons that this was probably more the list that his partner had, and that the kids, as he said, were a distance apart. I can't actually show that. The kids were a distance apart from everybody else. They were way up here, and then it came all the way back down to everybody else. So how should it run instead? Let me get my pen back out again. And I remember one of the first times I ever showed this, and I showed it in a course that I used to do called Breakthrough Weekend. Breakthrough Weekend, by the way, for anybody that knows what Breakthrough Weekend is, there are currently plans to bring it back in 2020. So there's a very good chance, if you keep an eye on the Facebook page or know anybody that would like it, get them to like the page. What will happen is that Breakthrough Weekend will be returning. And so if you've done it before, you can do it again, because it's going to be all new. Right. And I showed this on a Breakthrough Weekend, and I still remember. In fact, I think I saw someone. Yes, it was somebody that's on our chat's sister. Hello, yeah, you know who you are. That actually commented on this and turned around and went, "I don't get that at all." It was like they could not perceive of it in their head. And the lovely thing is that, as far as I know, what then happened was, when we actually started to explain it, that actually they did get it. Ready to see how it should be running? And by the way, if you're someone who ran either of those two other models, you might find this entirely alien. And by the way, to all the people who are saying date night, absolutely. This is what exactly is going to come. This is what the model should look like instead. I'm going to move that way. So this is what I call the perfect family list. That seems shit, doesn't it? See, I like pyramid. It was good, wasn't it? Perfect family pyramid. We could have it all based on stuff, but I don't know how you draw that. So anyway, so this is what it is, and this is how it should run. Number one, you. I don't care who you are, mum, dad, whatever. Number two, mum, dad, whatever. Partner, husband, wife, whatever it is. This changes very, very slightly if this person is not the mum or dad of these people. I get that. We'll come back to that a little bit later. Number three comes the kids. Third on the list. And then comes work and everything else. Your mum, your dad, your best friend, blah, 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 blah. The only person that's allowed to beat this is the dog, the cat, or perhaps the gerbil. Now, why does this work? Here's why it works. And it's super, super simple. You put you first, right? So imagine that you put you first. And all of a sudden what you do is you start making decisions about what you want to do. Now, stick with me, because some of you will still be wobbling about the fact that my kids can't be third best. My kids aren't only third best in life. They have to be more than that. Chill your beans. Let me finish first, right? Okay, so you come first on the list. And therefore what happens is that I'm not saying, again, just like I said earlier on, this is not permission to go out there and be a selfish bastard. That is not what it is. This is not about, I was watching a Facebook Live there, everybody. Do you know what? Mum or dad is now number one. Screw you all. I'm going to the pub. That's not what it's about at all. What it's about is asking very first of all, is this okay for me? So yes, you've been asked for a lift. Or yes, you've been asked to do X, Y, Z. Yes, you've been asked to be at a certain place at a certain time or to give a lift. Genuinely, is your life okay for you? As a mum or a dad, and the decisions that you make, is your life okay for you? And if the answer to that is no, then why the bloody hell not? Again, not permission to be selfish, but if you're running about, you never have any time for yourself, you're constantly knackered, nothing ever happens the way you want it to, you're constantly sitting in cars and cold and drafty football pitches, and you do that constantly, again, I get that sometimes parenting is a sacrifice and we do these things because we love them. This isn't just about these one individual moments, it's about a whole overall thing. But if you're not first, then the question for me is, why aren't you first? Imagine what it would be like if just now and again in fact, can I tell you a story about this? It was so, so lovely. So lovely. I remember meeting a lovely lady once who came on some of her trainings, and I met her in Glasgow. And we were talking about how she could set up a business. And we were having this amazing conversation about how she could set up a business. And actually, she was brilliant at what she did, but she was spending all her time looking after everybody else in her family, her husband and her children. She was very much the first one that I showed you. She was this one. This is how she was running it. Kids were very much first. Partner, I mean, not that he was doing anything in particular. It wasn't like he was demanding or anything. She was choosing to put him first and doing certain things, while he was actually trying to very much encourage her to go out and look after herself. But she didn't grow up that way, and therefore that's not what she did. And I still remember that she showed me a picture of her from about 6 or 7 years before, when her children were very small. And what she said is, I want to be that woman again. And the interesting thing about her was, and I don't mean this isn't derogatory or anything, this is just how it was. She looked tired. She looked so tired. She looked as if she hadn't really taken care of herself in a long time. It wasn't that she was in any way like terrible, but you know, you can just tell that somebody's not been looking after themselves. She had bags under her eyes. You could tell she wasn't happy with the way she looked. She talked about the fact that she put a little bit of weight on. And at the end, I still remember that at the end, we'd had a coffee, and I'd known her for a little while at this point. And she tried to give me money to pay for the session. But actually, I genuinely had agreed to meet her for a coffee just as a meet up, as a pal. And we sat there and we were chatting away, and she tried to give me money. She tried to give me 60 quid. And at the end of it, I remember I said, I don't want the money. That's not what I want. This was just friends, and she was insisting on giving me it. And so what I said to her was, I was like, okay, give me the money. But I was like, can I just ask a question? Do you like being given gifts? And would you ever refuse a gift? And she said, well, of course not. I would never refuse a gift. So what I did was I slid the money back over the table and I said, okay, excellent. What I've just done is I've just bought you a haircut. Now, that might sound terrible. I've just bought you a haircut. It sounds terrible when it came out of my mouth. But what I meant was a £60 opportunity that she would never have spent on herself to go and pamper herself and sit and just be her, to talk to an adult, to get a head massage and a hairdresser when somebody else washes your hair, and you just get to for 2.5 hours. I don't get 2.5 hours. I'm in and out in 20 minutes if I'm lucky. But for 2.5 hours or something, just to sit down and go, and just to be her and to put herself at number one. I ask you, Facebook pals, when the last time you did that was. Now, the interesting thing is, once you start making decisions about that, imagine, let me give you just one other example. Imagine your children want to go to football every Tuesday night. They could go other nights, because they could go potentially on other nights, or maybe someone else could take them, or there's another way of it working. It's not that you're denying your children necessarily. And you want to go back to college, to night class, to try and learn a new skill that you just think that you would absolutely love and enjoy, or it might change your career. Which one do you choose? Do you take the kids to football every week and then sit there in 10 years' time going, oh, I wish 10 years ago I'd done that course? Or do you put yourself first and you say, we're going to find another way to get you to football, or what you can do is you can join another team, or we can find a way of making this work. But you know what? I'm going to my night class. And what happens is when you start to do that is that all of a sudden inside you, your boxes start to get ticked. And once your boxes start to get ticked and you start going out for that run and you go to the gym rather than running home to make everybody's dinner, when you start making decisions that have you at the forefront, not as selfishness, I know I have to keep on clarifying that, then what happens is you begin to transform. Now, when you begin to transform, this begins to transform. Because what happens is that you start looking at your relationship, and what happens when you start looking at your relationship is one of two things. You either look at your relationship and you go, do you know what? We are going to work our arse off because this wasn't always like this. And I believe that it's important enough, because I now feel good about myself, to work on this and make our relationship fantastic. And this is the point when all of a sudden relationships go through massive turnarounds and massive ups in terms of the romance. And as many people have said, date night. As Anne-Marie said there, I always feel better after date night, chat and wine and peace to eat dinner. I would say that it's even bigger than the peace, because that's what everybody says, peace away from the kids. But it's not. It's actually time to remember that you are both adults, because parenting is another full-time job, and it's nice sometimes just to get time out. You know how it's nice when you go on a staff night out and you sit down with one of your colleagues and you go, do you know what? See that guy in that department? He's a dickhead, by the way, and I don't like him. And your friend turns around and goes, do you know what? He is a dickhead. I don't like him either. And you have this great banter over a bottle of wine, and everybody's a great laugh, and everything's fine. And you go back into work on Monday and you go, I feel fantastic. I feel as if I've just offloaded loads of stuff that I just had been building up. This is the same as when you go out with your partner. It's that important to spend time with each other. When we were very early in our relationship, I always remember my wife really pushing for the fact that at least once a year that we got a weekend away ourselves. And I must admit, I think I was probably this one as well at that point. Maybe sometimes this one, I don't know, we could ask my wife, she'd probably say, but she's watching Bake Off, so she's not watching this just now, so I got away with anything, to be perfectly honest. But whatever one it was, I didn't see, oh my God, no, but the kids. It was the best thing, genuinely, that we ever did. It was so important to our relationship because we got to go away and be grown-ups. So what happens is this begins to transform. Or what happens is that you go into your relationship, and this isn't maybe quite as friendly, but what can happen is you go back into your relationship and you go, I don't know if this is really working. And what happens is you make a change. This is for a future one, but I always remember a comment, some of you might have heard me say this before, but I remember this being said at one point, which is that it's much better to come from a broken home than it is to live in one. It's much better to come from a broken home than it is to live in one. I've always loved that comment because I think it really sums up so succinctly what and why sometimes it's valuable to look at your relationship and go, is this really what we want? Is this really helping the kids? Who this all started because the most important thing to you is your kids. Let's imagine that this goes brilliantly. So now they have mum or dad who are happy. They have mum or dad who are happy with mum or dad, and these two people are now tight. And not only are these two people tight, they act like friends, they are affectionate, they're compassionate, they're funny, they're relaxed with each other. Sometimes they have arguments and then they show their children that they can make up after arguments. How can these children here be anything else than frickin' happy if these two people are living their best lives? They can't. What happens is that now that these people are looking at two amazing role models going, oh my God, I hope that when I grow up, I have a relationship like you. Let me ask you just now, if you're this one, if your children grow up, do you want them to have this relationship? Do you think that's how it should be? Imagine your lovely son or lovely daughter here in terms of this relationship. Is that how you want to see them live their life? Because let me tell you right now, that's what you're teaching them if this is your model, or the other one on the other side. This is how you make happy children. How you make it is by you two being happy. And then what happens is they can't fail to be happy. And when your foundation is brilliant, gosh, your work are now getting the best you. You're skipping into work every day. You're going, oh, we had a lovely weekend. Oh, we had a nice night last night. We just sat and had family movie night. Oh, no, me and her are away for the weekend, just the two of us, and the mother-in-law is watching the children. It's going to be amazing, or whatever it is. And what happens is that your relationship, and not only with yourself, but with your partner, with your work colleagues, and most importantly, with your children and your family, transforms. But you have to be first. I am so passionate about this as a model. And again, just to kind of reiterate, this isn't about in any way at all. This isn't about you being selfish. But it also is. Because sometimes, as long as it's done okay, it's okay to be selfish. I have an absolutely beautiful post that I've just not had time to write up yet that I'll stick up on the page in a couple of days about a thing from the world of NLP called an ecology check. And what an ecology check is that from an NLP perspective, when we're training people, one of the things that we teach our practitioners, or anybody, because it doesn't have to be a practitioner, it could be you, what we teach them is a very simple little mantra to run in their head. Is this okay for them, so the client? Is this okay for the people who are around them? Is this okay for their world as a whole? But you can flip that round and apply it to yourself. Is this okay for me? Is this okay for the people who love me? And is this okay for my world as a whole? So for instance, let's imagine the college course one again, or the university thing. Is this okay that I go back to university? Is that okay for me? Yes. Is it okay for the people who love me? Yes. Is it okay for my world as a whole? Now, is it? Financially, would that be okay? Because it's not okay to just say, oh, do you know what? Brian said I should put myself first, so I'm going to go back to university for 4 years. Hope no one minds. I'm now no longer going to be bringing in a salary. I hope that's okay. Everybody's just going to have to work hard, including you, Erin. I know you're only 4, but you're going down the pit. Or something like that. I don't know. Maybe that's a bit old-fashioned. I don't know if you have a mining community where you are, but if not, it builds character. So what I'm saying is that therefore it fails the ecology check. But sometimes actually the answer can still be no, but it's still something that's valuable to do. Because actually in the longer term, it's actually more important. You know, so it could be, is it okay if I go back to university? Yes. Is it okay for the people who love me if I go back to university? Yes. Is it okay for my world as a whole? Well, what if actually all you mean for the world as a whole is the fact that it means that your work will suffer if you're not there? So for instance, you go, is it okay for my world as a whole? And you go, oh God, you know, we're on a 2-year project at the moment that I'm the project manager of, and this is, you know, I'm the one that's been controlling it all. And that means that you've just put this before all of these things. And the question is that in any way healthy? I don't think I even have to answer that question. I think you already know the answer to that. So sometimes, depending on when the answer no comes in, actually sometimes it's still okay to do. And it's all about looking at this ecology of the choice that you're about to make. And the question is therefore, is it more important for you? Is it more important for your family and your partner? Anyway, I hope all this makes sense. And I've met so many amazing mums, dads in my time that I've worked with, that I've had the pleasure of being on courses with, that I've had the pleasure of training or doing therapy and coaching with, that have sat in front of me, wanted to make it better, who have run this as a family model. This isn't something I've just made up off the top of my head. This is something that I have watched work again and again and again. Can I give you just one last thing on this that just popped into my head as a wee thing? When you come in from work, who gets the first physical contact or acknowledgement? Now, more than likely, the dog or the cat. I absolutely get that. But after that, I genuinely am talking, if you're going to get this model to work well, that if your 3-year-old walks up to you when you walk into the house tomorrow and goes, "Mommy, Daddy," and puts their hands up, that the person who gets the first kiss is your partner. If they're there, of course. If they're not, then I'm not, I suppose you could blow them one, I suppose, if that's what it is. But if they're there, the first person that gets the first contact and the first acknowledgement is your partner. And then what you do is you turn around. Because remember what I said earlier on about spoiled children. You're always teaching when you're a parent. Always teaching. And one of the things that we have to think about is, do you know what? See, from a very young age, you're going to learn that we're first and we're a team. And then you're so important, but that you come next. And what I would say is, as many times as possible, not always possible, if you walk in and your 3-year-old falls down the stairs, go and look after them and don't go, "You just wait there, stop screaming, your arm is only at a very funny angle and we'll be able to fix that once we get you to A&E. How are you doing, hen?" And giving them a big, I'm not suggesting that at all. What I'm saying is that the majority of times, make sure that this is the list that you're running. You, partner, kids, work. Perfect family, perfect you. Love that. Don't know where that came from. I'm just going to have a wee look at some of the comments here. Yeah, brilliant. If anybody is looking to come on Breakthrough, then give us a shout and we'll see what happens. Jackie, go for it. If you need any help with that, then that would be a great thing. Sarah, I love that. So Sarah's saying, I ask couples to consider the relationship as a living, breathing entity. I ask them, what does your relationship need? What is the relationship asking of you, wanting you to notice? You, your partner, and the relationship. And that's it. It very much is. It's a living, breathing thing, and it needs work. To go right back to the start as we bring this to a close, the reason that these relationships, as I said at the beginning, start to break up isn't because of the big thing that's happened. That big thing is there because of lots and lots of little things that have chipped away at whatever that, and I'm going to use Sarah's words, is that living, breathing entity is what has been chipping away at it. Relationships don't actually really end overnight. What happens is they end over time, and then what comes is a point when the switch gets flicked. And it's at that point that actually you consciously acknowledge that the relationship has changed. But actually up to that point, it's possibly been changing for years. And I think that basically what you have to do is get out there, and sometimes, to use Jackie's words, is that what you have to do is go and do a bit of a rejig and get that family pyramid or whatever it is back into an order. Now, very important thing, just as you go and do that, I just say to you that if you have been running either of the ones that we talked about at the beginning, this one here, kids, partner, you, work, or the other one, which is kids, you, them, work, if you've been running either of them, be gentle at first. It's just remember that if you've been running this for a long, long time, that I'm not saying be soft, and therefore to go, oh, well, no, I won't bother. What I'm saying is you have to be someone who is on a mission, someone who is looking forward and going, this is a long-term change. And sometimes baby steps can be easier for people to get used to. But you have to sometimes stand your ground and realize that some people are going to turn around and go, I don't like it when this happens. I think I said in the last one, I can't remember if this has been saying this to clients, but I met somebody recently who said that one of their friends said, I liked you more when you were sick. And what they meant was depressed or anxious, because actually they didn't like the new one that stood up for themselves. I think that, therefore, indicates someone who shouldn't be anywhere near your pyramid, or anybody that should be anywhere near anything that you do. Anybody that loves you will accept the change, even if at first they find it uncomfortable. Facebook dogs, how you doing? I hope that this has been worth missing Bake Off for. Thank you for everybody that has joined in and everybody that said hello. We're working at the moment to try and find a regular slot for these Facebook Lives so that you can kind of know when they're going to happen, and you can kind of do EastEnders, and then you can do a bit of HeadStrong Live with HeadStrong Live. I quite like that. I was going to call it Facebook Live, but I like that with HeadStrong Live. I'm going to keep that. Anyway, so you can come and join some HeadStrong Live. Just like last time, if you're watching this in the future, then please still leave us comments, because we'll come back and we'll see them. So this isn't the last thing, so you can come on and join us. Look out for some courses that are coming up, Breakthrough Weekend next year, and some other stuff. If you've liked what I've said tonight and you're looking to transform your family, remember, Cracking the Teen Code is available from Amazon. Makes a great Christmas present. Yes, we're nearly there. I know I'm about 10 days early. Forgive me. In fact, I'm not. I'm 6 days early. 6th of October, or 6th of November, sorry, we're allowed to completely talk about Christmas. Buy the books. Buy them both. Put a ribbon on them. They'll be beautiful. Third one will be out next year, and you can buy them that as well. But if you have any ideas, anything that you'd love us to talk about on a Facebook Live in future, please leave it in the comments. We'll come and see it. And I promise that if it's a good enough topic, we're always looking for great ideas from you guys. So if you come up with something, I'd love you to explore this, even if it's a big concept. As someone said, I remember a few ones ago, somebody asked for one on grief. We've not quite done grief yet, although, we're thinking about doing maybe a griefy breakups one. So anything at all like that, give us your ideas. We'd love to hear them. Thank you for joining me for the last 45 minutes, people of Facebook. I hope you've all been well, and I will speak to you again soon. I'm Brian from HeadStrong. It's been lovely spending tonight with you, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your evening and a great week. Thanks very much. Bye.
Shine so bright, 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 shine so bright.